Sacrificing without your heart invested is meaningless. That has never been what God wants. So going to church every Sunday, for example, is pointless if you don't go and genuinely are in there to worship and to love on people and to be encouraged to go out into the rest of the world all for the rest of the week. Hi, and welcome to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter, and I'm bringing you the Bible in 365 days, which means I'm reading it every day, and I'm coming and I'm sharing my thoughts on my everyday reading. The reading plan that I'm using is called the 1 Year Chronological Bible Reading Plan, and it is at oneyearbibleonline.com. So you would go on there, download their free reading plan, make sure it's chronological, which means it is in historical order, not in order of cover to cover in the text. So here are your basics. It is day 256. Oneyearbibleonline.com is where the reading plan is from. It is September 12th, and our reading today is Zechariah 6-8 and Ezra 5:3 through 6:14. So I am going to start 2 minutes of history. If you have been here before, fast forward these 2 minutes and then come back, and then we will start hopefully as soon as possible. Okay. So if you have never been with me before, we are in the nation of Israel. It is in around the 530s. What has come before this is Adam and Eve, going back to the beginning. They ate the forbidden fruit. They broke the world. After they broke the world, God is consistently trying to bring the people back to him, right? So they broke it. The world has some broken pieces to it. We have broken pieces to us. And he is trying to turn our hearts towards him. He's showing us himself all the time. And he's saying, look at me, follow me. I'm the way. I'm the truth. I'm the one that you need to follow. This other stuff doesn't matter. None of it is good for you. And so what he did is he established people groups. So we started out with, like I said, Adam and Eve, and then they kind of scattered and they all bred and they made new people. And then the world was really bad. And during the time of Noah, he was the only one righteous and he was left. And so he destroyed the world with a flood, and only Noah and his family were left, and they rebuilt the population. Once they rebuilt the population, one of their generations in the nation of Shem, the generation of Shem, which was Noah's son, there was a guy named Abraham, and the Lord called him to go to move out of where he was, and then to go build sort of an area for the Lord. And Abraham did that, and then the Lord made a covenant with him, and then made a covenant with one of his sons, and then made a covenant with one of his sons, and then there was a covenant with the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel moved to the nation of Egypt with the Lord's blessing, but once they were there, they started to follow the gods of Egypt. So the Lord lifted up people, Egyptians, in order to oppress those people. And then once those people called out to the Lord came to their rescue, saved them from their punishment that they were going through, brought them up and put them into the land that was the Lord's. It was the land that the Lord loved, the land that the Lord built, the land of milk and honey. This was a great place for them to live. Established the Israelites in that area, which is current day Israel. And all he said is I want you to follow me. He created all these laws and statutes and all of these things in order for these people to follow him. They didn't. They kept falling away, and then the Lord would call them back, and then they would fall away, and then they would cry out to the Lord, and the Lord would come back. Then they asked for a king, and he sent them Saul, and then Saul was a terrible king, and then he sent them David, who was a much better king, and he said, I'm going to keep David on the throne, and he meant David's descendants, on the throne of Israel for all time to come. And then all the kings kept breaking and falling apart and messing up, split the kingdom into two, and then because they didn't follow the Lord, these great big nations came and overtook them, Assyria and then Babylon. Babylon wound up putting them in captivity for 70 years. The entire nation was scattered. They were no longer their own nation. The Lord poured out his wrath on all the people, and now they are in the place where they're coming back. That's our 2-minute history. So a generation has come back, right? King Cyrus has kind of decreed a law, and he said, listen, I want you guys to go back and I want you to build a temple. And so this generation came back and they built the foundations, and then they kind of did what they wanted to do. This is essentially what I'm going to say is the time of the prophets, because prophets over the past couple years have come and gone, and their main job is to cry out to the people of Israel, to cry out to God's people and to say, guys, you are turning away from the Lord. You are turning away from everything that he has asked you to do. You are not loving your neighbor. You are not being kind. You are not being a representative of God and who he wants the nations to see. And you're turning towards other gods and you're following them and you're doing the things that they're asking you to do. And so come back to the Lord, because if you don't come back to the Lord, God is going to punish. And he did. And so now we're in the time of prophets where they're kind of saying the same thing. Now you're back. The Lord has laid out his wrath on you, but now this generation has come back, but you still aren't doing the things that you were supposed to do. Remember your ancestors. And this is one of those things that he repeats to them over thousands of years. Remember your ancestors. Remember what happened before. Do not be like your ancestors. And this is what he says in the beginning of Zechariah. So in order to go into where we are in Zechariah, which is 6, I just want to hit on each chapter in Zechariah because I feel like God is giving us a full message in Zechariah, which is hard when we're kind of coming at it in this like really teeny tiny way. It's hard to see what the overall message is. So in Zechariah 1, I feel like he's like establishing a foundation, right? Because this is what God does. He's like a God of order, not a God of chaos. So in Zechariah 1, he's essentially saying to them, return to me. Do not be like your ancestors, right? Where they didn't follow me. And I will return to you, right? So there is sort of a stipulation there. He's offering them the world. He's offering them everything. But he says, I have requirements of you. You need to follow me. So return to me and I will return to you. Do not be like your ancestors who didn't listen to me. I sent them prophets. Right now, Zechariah is a prophet. I sent them prophets. They didn't listen to the prophets. You need to listen to your prophets. I send them for good reason. I don't just send them because I feel like sending them and then punishing you at the end when you don't do what I asked you to do. I'm asking you to do it. And again, I say this because the here and now is really important as well. If you are listening and you are a follower, I don't want to make any assumptions that you are a follower, but if you are listening and you are a follower, God doesn't send his prophets, his preachers, his pastors, his speakers, his talkers, his messengers, whatever it is that you want to call them. He doesn't send them just to send them, right? He sends them because he's telling the whole world about himself. And those are the people that he's just, for whatever reason, designated, right, through the Spirit to go out and speak. And it's not for their own good. It's for the world's good, right? It's to draw people in. It's for those who are in the house to go, oh, I'm not acting like I'm in the house. It's for those who are outside of the house to go, oh, that's what the house looks like. I want to be a part of that house, right? So there are, depending on who it is, the prophet that you're speaking to, or the person, the messenger, the pastor, whatever it is, right? There are different people in which they're speaking to, but the message is always clear. This is God, and we should be following God. We, as those who say we follow God, we actually have a bigger responsibility because we've already been given the gift. We know what the gift is. We understand what the gift is. Therefore, our jobs, I think in some ways are bigger because our job is to do what he asks in order to represent, so someone can look at us and go, oh, I want to be a part of that house, right? So I'm me as somebody presenting online. I cry out to the people who say they believe and follow to actually follow and believe and trust and surrender and give everything that you have to the Lord, because that's the way that other people see and then want to be drawn into the Lord, right? For those who want to be drawn to the Lord. Okay. So Zechariah 1, this is what he says, return to me. Sorry, I know I belabored that one a little bit. I kind of beat that one to death. In Zechariah 2, somebody comes and measures the walls because the glory is returning. So he says to these people who've come back, right? And again, the foundation's been built, and this is sort of like the next generation. And he's saying to them, do not be like your ancestors, the ones who got punished for 70 years, the ones who only built the foundation and then turned around and messed around and didn't do anything else. Learn from this. Listen to the prophets. Number 2, I'm measuring these walls because the glory is coming back. The Lord will be back here and will live amongst you guys, right? It's coming to live with Judah. Chapter 3, he cleanses the priests. So we see him doing very like seriously with Joshua, but I think this is a message where he's going, okay, I'm bringing them back and I am going to, they can't just come back and walk in and be clean. Like it's not just magic. They're going to come in and I am going to clean them. I am going to consecrate them and allow them now to be that bridge again between me and you guys and the people. And then in chapter 4, he's confirming Zerubbabel, who's the governor in that nation right now, who is a representative of David, right? He's an descendant of David. And so he's sort of confirming that, and he's confirming how they should be finishing the temple. So Zerubbabel, so now we've got, as we did in the past, we've got a high priest, we've got a leader who used to be a king, but who now is just a governor. And he's confirming that those people are the people. And now this temple needs to be built. So now God's home needs to continue construction. And then we go into chapter 5, and this is where like the scroll comes in, that flying scroll. And I originally thought it was just for the nation of Israel, but I'm rethinking, and I'm now thinking it's for the whole world. So he's showing us that he is going to cleanse the world, right, of sort of the evildoer. It's like the thief, and then the one who takes his name, the one who like sort of like lies about his name. And so those people, he's cleansing that. So do you see how we're kind of putting all these pieces together for what is to come, right? This is the prophet saying to you, not you, but the Israelite at that time, this is what the future looks like, right? This is what's happening. So now we move down into this 4 chariots area. And I know I went deep into that, but I really want you guys to sort of understand the basic overview and foundation of what that is, because we sort of just move on from there. So now we're moving into Zechariah 6, and he has sent the wickedness, right, that over into, well, he hasn't yet, but he's prophesied sending the wickedness over into Babylon. And sort of like the wickedness is sort of going to stay there until it needs to be opened up, and it's sent all over. And that goes with this. So then we go to these 4 chariots. All that. Now we go to 4 chariots. Visual wise, right, I think he's trying to construct a picture. There are these 4 chariots. They're all different colors. It doesn't necessarily say there's a rider in the chariots, which is something I always find interesting, but it's just a chariot with horses. And so the chariot and the horses they're scattered. They're all sent out into these different lands. And so they're all different colors. And it says, these are the 4 spirits of heaven going out from standing in the presence of the Lord of the whole world. One's going to the north, one's going to the west, one's going to the south. It says, when the powerful horses went out, they were straining to go throughout the earth. And he told them to go. Then the Spirit called to me, look, those going toward the north country have given my spirit rest in the land of the north. So it looks like God has rested. What's the north? Why, right? Why is it rested? So we're making some assumptions. I went into different areas because this sentence was slightly confusing for me. And what in one of the versions it says, my spirit appeased my wrath in the north. And so the north, for literally geographically for Israel, is both Assyria and sort of Babylon. Like I feel like Babylon is west, but it's sort of northwest. And so they came in and conquered from the north. Like if you look at their pattern, they kind of came in and conquered Israel from the north. So it looks as if God also sent them out to the north, and he's going out to punish those areas. And then his wrath is going to be appeased once he punishes the areas that hurt Israel. All right, moving down to Zechariah 6:9, it says, then the word of the Lord came to me, and it says, take the silver and gold, and you're going to make a crown. So again, I feel like this is an image. Joshua is currently the high priest. And so they say, take this crown, get these people to get gold and silver, and you're going to take this crown, and you're going to go put this crown on Joshua. So here we go. Now, Joshua is, for me, Joshua is a representation, right? This is the way I say it. Joshua is a representation because it says, set it on the head of the high priest. So we know that at the time, Joshua is the high priest. And then the Lord Almighty says, here's another one where I went to a couple of different versions, like King James, NASB 95. I have the NIV on me. Even the Message, right? Like I try to go to a couple of uniquely different versions to see if I can piece together what it says. Because here it says, here is the man whose name is the branch. Directionally, I found it a little bit confusing. So a couple versions, or maybe one version says, there is the man, right? So they're distinguishing it's somebody different. A couple of versions say, behold the man who is the branch. This one says, here is the man. So my initial instinct is here is the man means it was Joshua. But piecing some stuff together through the rest of the chapter, I don't think it's Joshua. I think there is another here. There's another man represented through this, right? And so he's saying to Joshua, here here's the man. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. So I always want you to kind of bear with me and read it as you would read it to say. So it says, here is the man whose name is the branch. You had talked about the branch before. He's going to branch out and build the temple of the Lord. It is he who will build the temple of the Lord, and he will be clothed in righteousness and majesty and sit on his throne. He will be a priest on the throne, and there's going to be harmony between those two. Between the two what? Between the priesthood and the throne, which is what we have right now. Right now we have Joshua is the priest, Zerubbabel is the throne. I know he's not the king, but he's still the throne, right? And we had always had the throne. So priest and throne. This man, it looks to me, is going to be both, right? So he's going to harmonize those two in himself, and he's going to be both the priest and the leader, high king, governor, guy that sits on the throne, right? So he's going to be both of those things. And it says, those who are far away will come and help build the temple of the Lord. So this is maybe a new temple, right? After that, maybe Ezekiel's temple. Maybe this is going to happen right away. And so he's going to do construction on this temple. And it says, this will happen diligently. Sorry, this will happen if you diligently obey the Lord. He is talking to these people in this time. And he's saying, this is what's coming, right? This is our future. We're headed down this path. And then he says, if you diligently obey the Lord. That's huge in my mind. That's huge. I feel like if-thens are everywhere. And we go, yeah, but he promised. He did promise. But he said if. If we go back to Deuteronomy, he says, this will always be if you follow me. But if you don't, there's going to be destruction and people are going to be eating their babies, which is what we saw, right? So he does give these qualifications. It doesn't make him any less of the Lord because he gives these qualifications. He says, you follow me. I make the rules and you follow me. If you follow me, these things are going to come. And it looked like maybe those things were going to come in their time, right? So maybe what the Lord was looking for was for them to be diligently following him. Diligently doesn't mean perfectly, by the way. So caveating that a little bit, because David was not perfect, but David followed the Lord. David, years and hundreds of years later, they would still say, like my servant David. Okay, God would still say, like my servant David. I honor you because of my servant David. So I think we know through reading from the past, right, that David followed the Lord. David also did some not great things to Bathsheba and then took Uriah out, right? Her husband Uriah. So and then he did a census and then he did another census, right? Like he did things that were dishonoring of the Lord. David sinned. David was a man that was diligently after the Lord's heart. And so I think that is what God is looking for. He is not looking or asking, I don't think, for perfection, but he is asking us to be diligently following him, right? Diligently do your homework. Maybe you skip a day, maybe you don't skip a day, but you don't skip every day, right? Every day you're like, I'm not really diligently following the Lord, right? I'm soaking in this one thing, and so I'm not following the Lord, right? He's asking you to diligently follow him. When you mistake, repent, right? Like diligently follow the Lord. Not just about your sacrifices. Okay, that one I went on about as well. All right, so this will happen if you diligently obey the Lord. Boom, that's Zechariah 6. Moving on to Ezra. So in Ezra, we're going a little bit more literal here. So at this time, Tatnai, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Shether-Bozenai and his associates went and asked these people. So they watched these people, these Israelites, these Jewish people. They are building the temple now. So now we see that the foundations are done. Boom, they come in, they start building up the temple. And so these two come in. These two represent Darius, who is still king in Babylon, right? And so he's sent them over. Cyrus has sent them over. He's king in Babylon. And these two are representing him. But these two see that they're building this like amazing temple to this God. And they're like, what's happening here? Why is all this money going out to here? Why is all your time being spent all over there, right? So they're definitely asking some questions. And so luckily they didn't stop them. what they did was is they were like, we're going to go reach out to the king. So they asked the Israelites these questions. The Israelites don't really report anything to them. And so they go and they ask the king. They go and send a letter to the king and they say, hey, we asked these Israelites these questions. And they essentially said to us that Cyrus gave them all this money, sent him over here to do it, commanded that they do it. And so that's what they're doing right now. They're kind of giving honor and credit to them in a letter. And he said, so check your archives and make sure that that's true. So Darius checks his archives and makes sure that's true. And it was true, because it says, now if it pleases the king, let a search be made in the royal archives of Babylon to see if King Cyrus did, in fact, issue a decree to rebuild his house. Verse 1 of Ezra 6 says, King Darius then issued an order, and they searched the archives. So then they send a letter back, and it says, Cyrus says, let the temple be rebuilt, 60 cubits high, 60 cubits wide. He says, and then, now then, Tatnai, stay away from there. Don't mess with them. Let the people keep building what they're supposed to be building. Moreover, so not only that, not only am I saying don't mess with them, moreover, I decree you're going to do this for the elders that are in there. Their expenses are to be fully paid. So they're to be given anything and everything they need. So, and then it says, even sacrifices. So you're going to give them stuff to make their daily sacrifices, so that, I love this verse, so that they may offer sacrifices pleasing to the God of heaven. So here we go. This Darius is recognizing this God, and pray for the well-being of the king and his sons. So Darius is not messing around. He's like, I want that God to support me also. So let them there, give them everything that they want so that they can keep us where we need to be. Furthermore, if anyone defies this edict, I'm going to take a beam out of his house and I'm going to impale him on that beam, and then I'm going to burn the house to the ground. This is what the word of the Lord says, right? So he's taking himself very seriously. So they took him very seriously, and they did all of those things, right? And they helped to build, and it said, and they built and they prospered under the preaching of Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, right? These two prophets. These two continued to preach to them in the temple and around the temple and to the people while they were building this all up. And nobody messed with them. That was the hand of the Lord. So moving on to Zechariah 7. So we're kind of back into those prophecies. It says, in the 4th year, so now here we are 2 years later, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah on the 4th day of the month. It said, should I mourn and fast in the 5th month as I have done for so many years? So the priests and whatnot are coming to them. If you have been here for a while, or even if you have some familiarity with the Old Testament, you would know that God, from way back when, during the time of Exodus, started establishing festivals, remembrances, right? All of these things. There would be times where they would fast. There would be times where they would mourn. There would be times where they would celebrate. And they would do these same things in remembrance of the Lord every single year, right? So, and I want to say essentially it was every month there was something, but it was really often that they had these things. And so they're saying, should we do that? Like, the temple is back now. Should we be doing these things in the temple? And here's how the Lord responds. And I think this is fantastic for me. I really love this, because I think this gives us a glimpse. And I know I've talked about and we've heard these things before, but this gives us a real glimpse into what the Lord wants from us. Because I want to note that he doesn't say no. He does not say to them, no fasting anymore. He doesn't say to them, no festivals anymore. So don't hear what it doesn't say. Just hear what it does say. Okay? So it says, when you fast, this is what the Lord says. Ask these people, so all the people that are asking you, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month for the past 70 years, so while you were in Babylon, right, while you were away, was it me that you fasted? Was it for me that you fasted? When you were eating and drinking, were you not just feasting for yourselves? So he's checking their hearts. We have heard this from the beginning. And this is this line that we all give when we're like, oh, it's not just about what you do. It's not just about what you do. It is about what you do, but it's not just about what you do, right? So make no mistake. Again, don't hear what I'm not saying. These things are important. Fasting, festivals, right? They're all very important to the nation of Israel. Without them caring, they're worthless. Sacrificing without your heart invested is meaningless. That has never been what God wants. So going to church every Sunday, for example, is pointless if you don't go and genuinely are in there to worship and to love on people and to be encouraged to go out into the rest of the world all for the rest of the week, right? So without the heart behind the matter doesn't, I was going to say it doesn't matter, but I didn't want to do that. The heart with, right. It makes no sense. That messed me up. So he says, this is what the Lord Almighty said in verse 8. Administer, this is what he told the people of the past, right? Because he's like talking about the people of the past right now, some of the ancestors. This is what he says. He says, administer true justice. Show mercy and compassion to one another. Don't oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner or the poor. Don't plot evil against each other. Like, listen to those things. This is love your neighbor times 10. Don't oppress anyone. Give everything you have. Give to the poor, give to the needy. Show justice, show mercy, right? Like, be honest. Don't worry about yourself. Don't put yourself first. I know I'm adding words in, but like, this is the heart behind what he's saying. He said, they refuse to pay attention. So what he wants is this generation to pay attention to that. When I called, they didn't listen. So when they called, I wouldn't listen. So remember, all of those before you, they asked these same questions and they feasted and they festivaled and they didn't care. They didn't do anything else that I wanted them to do, right? They just did these little festivals, these, in some ways, things that are probably easier than the things that he's actually asking for. So he's saying, do these festivals, do these things, but also do these other things. The people before you didn't do that. Remember what they did, because when they didn't care, I didn't care. When they stopped honoring me, I no longer honored them. Moving on for Zechariah 8. It says, the word of the Lord Almighty came to him, so he continues to be speaking to the Lord. It says, I'm going to return to Zion and dwell in Jerusalem. So again, now he's like following through. You didn't do any, your ancestors didn't do any of these things. So you're asking me about these festivals. And then he's like, listen, I'm coming back. So in the future, I am going to be there, right? And he says, the city is going to be filled. I'm going to make everything prosper. Everything's going to be amazing. And he says, now hear these words. Let your hands be strong so the temple will be built. So he's given him all this past stuff. And he's like, let's go in and let's build everything up and make it the way it's supposed to be. Verse 11, he says, but now I will not deal with the remnant of these people like I did with the past. So the generation who had just built the foundations, their seed didn't grow. It didn't rain, right? Because they didn't do what God asked them to do. And he's like, I'm not going to deal with you guys like this. It's going to be good. I'm telling you to finish the temple and it's going to go well with you. He says, just as I determined to bring disaster on you and showed no pity when your ancestors angered me, so now I have determined to do good again to Jerusalem and Judah. Don't be afraid. These are the things you are to do. This is for you, people of Israel, 500s, building the temple. Speak truth to each other. Render true and sound judgment to your courts. Do not plot evil against each other and do not love to swear falsely. Don't lie. These are the things that I want from you. And then he said, the fasts of the 4th, 5th, 7th, and 10th months are going to become joyful and glad occasions and happy festivals. Therefore, I want you to love truth and I want you to love peace. This is how I want you to come together as a nation. The inhabitants of one city will go to another and say, let's go to entreat the Lord and seek the Lord Almighty. Like, this is all so great. This is amazing. And many peoples and powerful nations are going to come to Jerusalem to seek the Lord because you are doing these things. Everyone around you is going to see, and they're all going to come and they're going to seek the Lord. And he says, let us go with you because we have heard that God is with you. That's what everyone's going to say. And it's going to be a time of great prosperity. That's how I'm ending today. And I love ending like this. The Lord is so excited to have this generation back. And he's just lifting them all up and he's giving them everything. And he says, but I want you to speak truth to each other. And I want you to deal honestly with each other. And I want you to be good to each other. This is how I know that you follow me. So this is for us. I believe this is for us. Because if I follow Jesus, because I follow God, this is what I believe as well. So this is for anyone and everyone who's listening right now who is not an Israelite. If this has been a blessing to you, thanks for sticking with me. I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And then I want you to keep reading, as always, of course, and come back tomorrow.